Hello, I'm Esme Murphy, and welcome to Talking Points. President Donald Trump wants to get rid of mail-in balloting. The president said on his Truth Social media site that he wants to lead a movement to get rid of mail-in ballots ahead of next year's midterm elections. The president says mail-in ballots lead to, quote, fraud and are, quote, inaccurate. Minnesota voting by mail has become increasingly popular here. In 2024, 40% of Minnesotans voted absentee by either mail or in person. In this week's Talking Points, I'm speaking with the Minnesota Secretary of State about this, as well as other aspects of what the Trump administration hopes to do with your personal election data. The Justice Department wants the Secretary of State to turn over personal information about Minnesota voters, information that can include names, addresses, partial Social Security numbers, driver's licenses, email addresses, and phone numbers. Joining us to talk about these issues, as well as the concern about keeping political candidates' information secure, is the Minnesota Secretary of State, Steve Simon. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right. First of all, the president just put this on his Truth Social. Can he get rid of mail-in balloting?
No, we don't think he can. The Constitution's real clear. It says states are in charge of the time, place, and manner of elections, except that Congress can step in and make changes. It says nothing in the Constitution about a president, this or any other president, waving a magic wand in the Oval Office and just making giant sweeping changes to our election system. So if he does this by executive order, we will again, as we did earlier this year, go to court with a number of other states, and I think we're going to be successful. You just can't do that under our system. He doesn't have a magic wand to do that.
Well, of course, this president has done things that have not been done before by executive action, and specifically, he's used the majorities he has in both the House and the Senate to reinforce him. He's got seemingly an advantage in the Supreme Court. I mean, are you concerned that he's going to try to do this?
I think he may try. I'm optimistic about what we'll be able to do in the courts. Because
all right, let me ask you about mail-in balloting in Minnesota, because it's becoming extremely popular and so convenient for so many people. In your view, and I know you've been looking at this, does it lead to fraud and inaccurate ballots?
Absolutely not. There's no evidence of that. It's hugely popular. We had almost 1.3 million Minnesotans vote that way in the last election, and it's been even higher in past elections. And there's no evidence whatsoever that it's anything other than very secure. In Minnesota, in fact, we have security features in our mail-in ballots that very few other states have, making us even more protected and more secure. Minnesotans love it. They are embracing it. And I think it would be a really bad move to get rid of something that has been used so well for so long in Minnesota.
Well, let's get into that, because you've talked to me about this before. Minnesota actually has a long history in Minnesota. Absentee ballots have a long history, mail-in ballots in Minnesota. Tell us about that, because this is not something brand new.
Not at all new. This started in the Civil War, believe it or not, where Union soldiers from Minnesota were able to use absentee ballots, voting by mail, to get their ballots cast in elections way back in the 1860s. And then following up at the turn of the last century, there was a new embrace of that for non-soldiers and others as well. So in some form or fashion, really since the 1920s in the modern era, we have had voting by mail, and in 2014, we expanded it so that anybody who's eligible to vote, you or me or any of your viewers, can vote by mail if they can show that they are who they say they are, they live where they say they live, and if they provide certain security information that we require that most states don't. So in Minnesota, which is what I can speak to most directly, we have a very secure system when it comes to vote by mail, and that's one of the reasons, among many others, that people have really embraced it so much in the last few years.
And also, there are parts of Minnesota that have chosen to go strictly mail-in balloting. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, since 1987, we've had a law on the books in Minnesota that says to small cities and townships that if they want to, it's their choice, not my office's choice or anyone else, if they vote to go mail only, get rid of polling places where everyone automatically gets a mail ballot, they can. And as of this date, we have about 150,000 Minnesotans who live in communities where that is the main option for voting, which is that they get a ballot automatically mailed to them. And communities typically really, really like it. It's their choice. They're not stuck with it. They can toggle back and forth, but it's worked really well.
And I know that many of them are in far northern Minnesota, where it's hard, the city towns and the town halls are a long distance away.
That's right. It's really a matter of convenience and cost saving. If you're a small town, you got to buy the elections tabulating equipment. You got to hire, train, and pay election judges and poll workers. it makes dollars and cents for them in many cases as well.
All right. The Department of Justice wants you to turn over Minnesota voter data that you have, and this includes everything from names to partial social security numbers to driver's license numbers to email addresses. Why do they want it, and what have you continued to say about this?
Well, we're not alone. Well, there are many states that have received this, about 12 or so states that we know of. It could be more. We don't know what the end game is here, but here's what I do know. Minnesota law is very clear on the extra protections that personal identifying information get. Social security numbers, driver's license information, and federal law is also clear about that. There's certain things you need to prove and show before you start asking for that data, and the Justice Department so far has not done that. So we don't know what they want it for. We don't know how they're going to treat it or handle it or keep it or store it. And we don't know who else they're going to share it with. So they've been honestly not clear, and we need a lot more information. And we're not alone. States all over the country have said the same thing as Minnesota. Republican states, Democratic states, states in between. So most states are united on this. They're not articulating any sort of reason to give up private personal information on millions and millions of Minnesotans. And we're not going to do that unless we get the assurances we need, both in the law and in terms of what they're going to do with the data.
Yet you do give out voter information to those who come to your office and want to pay for it, like the parties do. Can you explain what you're giving out there and why?
Yeah, that's quite different. So for $46, any one of your viewers right now can order that data from us. And that data is just every voter's name, their address, their year of birth, their voting history, meaning obviously not who they voted for, but what elections they vote in. Do they just vote in presidentials or all the elections, so forth. That's $46, but even that is limited to political campaigns, political purposes, law enforcement, and the like, not for commercial reasons or any other reason. So that we willingly and often sell all the time. What they're asking for from Minnesota and many other states is something really a cut above. They're asking for Social Security information, driver's license information, and in some cases, other very personal sensitive information on voters. And again, state law is really clear that we draw a line around that stuff. And federal law is also clear that there are layers of privacy protections built in. So we're going to have to learn a lot more about what they're really up to here.
Your website has an awful lot of information about it, including about candidates. When they actually register and file to run for election, they have to file with your office. And in the past, they have put down their address and their phone number and a contact. That's something that's required, as I understand it, by Minnesota law. That's changed, and you're doing it differently now since the tragic assassination of Representative Hortman, her husband, and the attempted assassination of Senator John Hoffman and his family.
Yes, since the political violence of June 14th, we decided to step up, and just to be extra cautious, we have taken down from our website those public filings to the extent that they show someone's home address or their phone number. And we've issued a kind of security declaration, it's called, which we can do under the law to shield that for now. Now, we're going to defer to the legislature. They're out of session now. They come back in February. And when they do, they're going to have something to say about it. And we will do what they want us to do. But until then, it's sort of a bridge just to be safe.
Okay, because the law states it is public, but obviously with what has happened has shaken everyone and reveals the real danger that's at stake. I do have to ask you, there's been a lot of speculation about Governor Walz running for re-election and that he may not run. Your name has floated to the top of possible Democrats that would run if he chose not to. Is that true?
I really think it's important to give Governor Walz the space and the grace that he needs to decide what he wants to do next. And until he makes any sort of decision, I just don't want to, I want to leave him that space, and there will be time later for that kind of speculation.
All right, well, we'll obviously be following that and keeping on top of that. Thank you so much, Secretary of State Steve Simon. And that does it for this edition of Talking Points. Please email me with any comments or suggestions at esme@wcco.com. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Esme Murphy, WCCO News.